Are you ready, Debbie? Okay. It's 6 o'clock on Monday, August 15th, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting of the Petersburg Borough Assembly to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mark,
Excused.
Chelsea,
Excused.
Thomas,
Here.
David,
Here.
Bob,
Here.
Jay,
Excused.
Jeff.
Here.
Okay. We have four members in the chambers present. We have 3 members excused. And with that, I'd like to move to the voluntary pledge of allegiance.
Stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On the agenda, we have approval of minutes. There is a set of minutes for August 1st, 2022, assembly meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So move. Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded, and I'll just take a roll. All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Those minutes are approved as they stand. Are there any amendments to tonight's agenda? Hearing none, we will keep the agenda as it was proposed. We have one public hearing tonight. There was a public hearing for ordinance 2022-11, an ordinance amending chapter 4.04 entitled Purchasing of the Petersburg Municipal Code to increasing purchasing authorization limits for administrative officers of the borough and the borough manager, and to amend exceptions to bidding. Is there anybody, Clerk Thompson, on the line for this?
There is not.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to talk to this public hearing? Hearing none or seeing none, I will move on then. There are no bid awards tonight. I will move then to persons to be heard related to tonight's agenda. Clerk Thompson, is there anybody on the line that would like to talk to items related to the agenda?
There is not.
Okay. In the audience, is there anybody that would like to talk to items related to the agenda? Okay. Seeing nobody there, I'm going to move on to persons to be heard unrelated to the agenda. Again, Clerk Thompson, is there anybody that would like to speak to that?
There is not.
Okay. And again, in the audience, is there anybody that would like to speak to items unrelated to tonight's agenda? Okay, please come forward and state your name, and you have 5 minutes for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm David Berg, volunteer assistant fire chief for the fire department. I'd like to speak to the open fire EMS and SAR position that we have for the director right now. I joined the department over 25 years ago, and we've never found ourselves in this situation where we have a leaderless department. Especially troubling since we're down to one of our 3 employees at the station due to the planned maternity leave of our EMS coordinator and the lack of a department head. We feel that the borough should have hired a department head while the current one was still working. That would have made a smoother transition and allowed some training of the new person. We all knew approximately 6 months in advance that the last day of employment of Sandy Dixon, yet the borough has waited until the last day to try to hire someone. Here we are with no one hired months later, and if the goal is to destroy a group of volunteers, we're coming close. I'd like to remind you that without the volunteers of fire, EMS, and SAR, the borough would be required to do this work or find somebody to do it. Local knowledge is a key factor in our operations. No one knew how to run an emergency operations center during the pandemic, yet the fire department director was tasked with this and came through for the borough. This was a seat of the pants learning experience. Locals have applied for this position, and there's a process to help people get training. We urge the local hire program for this position. finding one of our own citizens to manage the fire department activities. People residing in Petersburg are familiar with the community and are vested in staying here. There's no convincing the family or finding suitable housing for a family that has to be hired from out of town. We feel there are local applicants that would have the ability to follow the job description and learn what's required that they don't already know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berg. Is there anybody else that would like to talk about items unrelated to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll move on with that. Tonight, there are no board, commission, and committee reports. Next item is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda tonight, there is an item, Weecon Enterprises, Inc., Tidelands lease renewal. Weecon Enterprises Tidelands lease is up for renewal effective September 15th, 2022. The assessed value of the lease remains at $67,200, resulting in an annual lease rate of $4,032. Do I have a motion to approve this lease?
So moved. Second.
Okay. It's been approved by Member Mucci and second by Member Kensinger. With that, I think Clerk Thompson, would you go ahead and take roll call, please?
Jeff,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Thomas, Bob,
Yes. With that, the lease is renewed unanimously. Under reports of other officers, there are none tonight. There's the mayor's report is, and give me a second here and I will go forward with the mayor's report. That is if I can find it.
page 12.
I got it. Okay. The 2022 municipal election filing for candidates. The filing period to be a candidate for mayor, assembly, or other local board and commission seats is currently open. The requirements and forms needed to be filed for candidacy are available at the front desk of the finance office or on the Borough website 2022 election page. The deadline to file is August 23rd, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. October 4th, 2022 Borough election, Petersburg, Alaska.
That's just a link, actually, Bob.
I'm sorry.
The blue part, the October 4th, that's a link to
That's- That's the election.
the
day.
election
That's
page.
the
Yes.
election day, yes. And with that, I'd like to add that there's lots of positions open for hospital board, school board, planning and zoning, the assembly. Please put your name forward. You have about a little more than a week to do that. Seeking letters of interest, Housing Task Force. The Petersburg Borough is accepting letters of interest from citizens who wish to serve the community by joining a task force to research the housing problem in Petersburg. Citizens from the following groups are needed: lot developers, road builders, land surveyors, building contractors, engineers, real estate agents, Petersburg Economic Development Council, Share Coalition, Petersburg Indian Association, Petersburg Medical Center, Petersburg School District, Petersburg Borough Assembly, public at large. The Assembly shall appoint members to this task force at the October 3rd, 2022 Assembly meeting. And if you're interested, please put your name in, submit your name for this task force. I think it's a good idea, and I think there's a lot of folks out there that have things to contribute. And letters of interest for this can be sent to Clerk Thompson at the Borough offices located 12 South Nordic Drive, by sending to P.O. Box 329, Petersburg, AK 99833, or by emailing to dthompson@petersburgak.gov. And with that, I'll go back again and add, there are plenty of positions open. Please consider running for one of these seats. Thank you. And with that, I'll move forward. Tonight with the manager report, the manager is having a well-deserved break. And with that, the manager report is in the record and I'll not have it read tonight. I'll just pass forward. Unfinished business, we'll move to. Ordinance 2022-11, An ordinance amending chapter 404 entitled Purchasing of the Petersburg Municipal Code to increase purchasing authorization limits for administrative officers of the borough and the borough manager, and to amend exceptions to bidding, second reading. If approved in the three readings, ordinance 2022-11 will increase the purchasing authorization limits from 5,000 to 10,000 for administrative officers of the borough, and from 30,000 to 75,000 for the borough manager. Ordinance 2022-11 was unanimously approved in its first reading. During the first reading, Assembly Member Kensinger asked if it were possible to leave the purchasing authorization limits for administrative officers of the borough to the manager's discretion. The second draft version of the ordinance is attached with wording highlighted in yellow added to account for this idea. The Assembly will need to amend ordinance 2022-11 by motion if they choose to use any of the suggested highlighted wording. In addition, Clerk Thompson realized that $5,000 spending limit is directly spelled out in PMC Code 3.12, Borough Clerk, and 3.48, Parks and Recs Director. If the Assembly wishes to increase the spending limits outlined in Chapter 404, amendments must be made to chapters 3.12 excuse me, and 3.48, as well as by motion. These changes are also highlighted in yellow. And with that, do I have a motion to consider this ordinance?
So moved. So moved. Second, sorry.
It's been moved by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Kensinger. And with that, discussion?
Yes. Yes, I would like, I don't know if this is appropriate portion or not, but I'd like to go forward the amendments that Clerk Thompson has so nicely highlighted and laid out for us to delete the portions that set the spending limits for department heads for those, whether it be the clerk or any department head, be determined by the borough manager.
Second that.
It's been moved by Member Kensinger to accept all the amendments that are in yellow. And it's been seconded by Member Mucci. Other discussion? Member Kensinger?
Yes. The reason for this is that the 2 years that I've been on the Assembly, I've never seen a report, a quarterly report or yearly report detailing the amount of money that a department had spent over their spending limit. So none of that comes in front of the Assembly anyway. And my other comment is that we have a budget and we approve that budget. And if there's any spending that's over that budget limit, the city manager or the borough manager has to bring that before us. So we know how much is going to be spent. To me, it just seems like a lot of bureaucratese for department heads to have to go to the borough manager to approve a spending amount that he's going to approve anyway. And so I would like to eliminate that step. And since the borough manager is our direct employee of this body, he's responsible for any of the errors or mistakes that any of his employees make. So we would hold him responsible, and then ultimately he'd hold his employees responsible. So I don't see the necessity to have this in our code, the detailing how much a respective department head can spend. I'd foresee that this borough manager or one in the future, depending upon a department head, depending upon the department, he would send that spending level accordingly. And, you know, some departments like Public Works, obviously, they need to spend a lot more money on a frequent basis, particularly right now for fuel. So I just think it'd streamline a lot of processes in government. And I don't see that we'd be losing any oversight any more than what we already have. So that's my reasoning for sponsoring this amendment.
Other comments? Yeah, Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you very much. So the amendment would cover all the highlighted yellow and the numbers that are printed in red?
The numbers that are printed in red are already there.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one comment, however.
Okay,
4.04020A is written so that if the assembly chooses to make an amount that the borough manager cannot exceed that amount, authority for, not for the manager, but for the administrative officer. It does say that the borough manager may, at the manager's discretion, increase an officer's authorized purchasing limit from $10,000 to an amount not exceeding blank, if the assembly so chooses to put in a top number. If you don't choose to put in a top number, if we don't put a number in there, we should remove some of that wording.
Member Councilor, would you like to amend?
Yes, like I've said before, if we increase the borough manager's spending limit to $75,000, and it would follow that the department head cannot spend more than $75,000 or whatever amount that the borough manager deems to give the authority for that department head to be able to spend. I would expect that to be a discussion between the borough manager and the particular department head.
Okay, so if we were to remove, let's say we, without the permission of the borough manager, accepting that the borough manager may, at the manager's discretion, increase an officer's authorized purchasing limit, period. And take away the rest of that sentence?
Yes,
Good.
Is that okay? I mean, if you're okay with that being added to your original amendment?
Yes.
Okay,
No, I just wanted to know if we needed an amendment to the, we do.
no, I think we're good.
Okay.
He said it's good to add it to his original amendment.
Okay,
If you're good with seconding that,
yes, I
then we're
am.
good.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay.
From my perspective, I agree with Member Kensinger's original idea of increasing the unit, but I think we've made this rather too complicated. I think there ought to be I think that the manager ought to be given the authority in a very simple authority to, one, not only set the limit, but but to be able to take it away in a very simple form. I don't see a need to make it so that each one of the departments has different limits. I think it ought to be the same or so forth, because otherwise it's very, very, in talking with the finance director and so forth, it's very, very hard to track if there's quite a few different limits. But I think that can be wrestled on the third round. Thank you. With that, if there's no other comments, will the clerk please call the roll on the amendment?
Bob,
Yes.
David,
yes,
Thomas,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Okay, the amendment is passed, and now back to the original motion.
as amended.
As amended. Would the clerk please call the roll on the original motion? On the motion, Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree. With what you said earlier, I think it would be nice if it was easier to deal with as opposed to identifying different departments and having different limits. But I think if we want to work on it over the next couple of weeks, I think it'd be nice if it was clearer and not confusing to anybody I mean, it's not going to be confusing to city staff, but for the public looking at it, it needs to be clearer. And I think we should be able to come up with
Thank you.
something.
I've talked to the finance director today, and I think there's some ideas of how to simplify that, but get Member Kensinger's idea. I totally agree with him into that chapter.
yes, no, I agree. I mean, personally, I would just leave anything out about the department heads to be, if you want to make it cleaner, and we just increase the borough manager spending authority to $75,000, and then he deals with his employees as he sees fit. Whatever, and we don't have to have it in code. So we don't have to go through this process of like saying, no, the city clerk can spend $5,000, Public Works can spend $75,000. I just think I don't think it needs to be in code, is what I'm trying to say. You know, we give the borough manager the authority to spend $75,000. Then he needs to transfer that down to his employees and he can do whatever he feels comfortable with.
Okay, we can work on some wording for
Okay.
that for the third
Mhm.
reading.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments? Would the clerk then please call the roll on the amended?
Yes, Thomas,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes,
David,
Yes,
Jeff,
that, the amended, that passes with unanimously. With that, we'll move on here. We have under new business, there are none. Under communications, those are listed in the packet. Item 17, assembly discussion items. Member Mucci has asked for a discussion on pre-sale of borough lots at proposed airport subdivision extension. And with that, Member Mucci, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Somebody brought up this idea over the last couple of weeks about the possibility of selling, or at least looking into how we sell some of the property up at the proposed airport subdivision extension. And I'm not sure the mechanics of making that happen. And I don't know if we have anybody here who can help me answer that question, but I could certainly, I could wait a couple weeks if we had more hands on deck to, help me answer this question. So unless there's somebody at city staff level who would like to speak about it, then I can push this off until a couple weeks. So thank you.
Comments from other assembly members? Seeing and hearing none, I have one, is that what I would like not to do is, if you look at Frederick Point North, what's been done there, the state sold most of those lots out there. And many of those lots do not have access. And I would not like us to create a situation like is there, where now the folks are asking the borough to provide access to those lots, of which we had nothing to do with to begin with. So I would hope we don't create ourselves a situation like that. And with that, I'll move on here. Assembly member comments. If any of the assembly members have comments tonight? Member Mucci.
I just have a couple. Thank you very much. Just a reminder that we have a housing work session on August 29th at 6:00 PM. And I was wondering if we could get kind of an update on the bear situation in town and the garbage can situation in town. I know it's that time of year where bears are roaming around, and if Chief Kerr would be willing to give us an update, I think he'd be happy for the folks at home to hear.
Okay. Chief
Yes.
Kerr, if you mind.
So the Bears have actually started a whole lot earlier this year, and with school starting, we wanted to make sure we had something in place to kind of mitigate it. Normally, we don't see the Bears showing up in town until for a little while. There's plenty of food out there for them, and for some reason, these ones are coming back. So with all the education or all the education we did last year with educating people on the bears and what to do, and then with the new borough garbage ordinance, I went through 3 readings and all the media attention last year. Fish and Game sent out a whole bunch of information. They did press releases or PSAs. Just recently, KFSK did a story, and so did the pilot on the bear issue. So to try and get the bear issue to drop before school starts, we started issuing citations, enforcing the new garbage ordinance. And basically, the citations are issued to people who make 0 attempt. These are the people that just left it out there, no strap on. So those are the ones who were getting the citations. If someone makes, so I sent out a guidance for the officers, and if there's no attempt to secure the trash can, then it equals a citation. If it's repeat offenders for not securing their trash, they get a citation. If someone attempts to secure their trash can, we can't prevent bears from getting it. If a bear wants into something, they're going to get into it. So those people get education. And then in the ordinance, it talked about on the day of garbage pickup, it said 8 o'clock, you can put your garbage out to the street and unsecure it so that the garbage can be picked up. I actually told my officers that if it's out there at 7:30, not to write the ticket, because I mean, a lot of places around here start at 8 o'clock. So you need to get to work on time. So if it's out there at 7:30 in the morning, and it gets hit by a bear, we're not gonna issue anything. We're just gonna let you know, hey, your garbage was hit. Some of the attempts recently the borough has done, we issued some citations over on 3rd Street, which has been kind of a heavy targeted area with the bear for some reason. And so we actually worked with Public Works and Sanitation to think outside the box. We have one of those new 14-yard dumpsters or 14.5-yard dumpsters the assembly approved last year, I believe. And that thing, in theory, is going to work great. I talked with PIA, I talked with Northwind. They all agreed to let us remove their big round garbage bins that were getting hit by the bear. And we put this big 14.5-yard dumpster in there with 6 doors that have latches on them. So that thing can be secured. The goal for that was to try and reduce these bears and try and get them to go back out in the woods, because if they don't do that, then we're gonna have to take other measures to deal with the bears. So that's where we're at so far.
Thank you.
Any other assembly member comments? Chief, go ahead.
I forgot one thing so that no one starts calling Fish and Game or the troopers. We've actually been working with Fish and Game, the troopers, and the Forest Service. We've been having meetings and discussions about the next step and what to do. So everyone is working together on this. So I just didn't want anyone to start calling them or giving them hate mail. So they're trying with us.
Thank you. With that, are there any recognitions? Member Gensinger.
I know Joe's, for you folks at home, Joe Vanicki has sat over there in the corner for as long as I can remember and reported city and then borough assembly meetings for many years. And he is retiring from KFSK and going to start to work as our new meter maid, not meter maid, excuse me, meter. Don't like that. Excuse me, meter reader and working for, so he's not leaving town, but I just want to thank him and KFSK for the many years of providing the service to the borough and Joe in particular.
And I would add that helped to keep the communications going in this room many, many times, as I'm sure the clerk would agree. Okay, thank you. Any other recognitions? And with that, do I have a move to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Okay, been moved in second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.